They say you never really know someone until you see them when they think nobody's watching. I'm Sarah Chen, Senior Data Analyst at Meridian Tech Solutions, and I thought I knew my boss Marcus Wellington pretty well. Turns out, I didn't know the half of it. Marcus was one of those middle managers who'd clawed his way up through sheer political maneuvering rather than actual competence. He had this way of taking credit for everyone else's work while somehow making you feel grateful he even acknowledged your existence. Classic corporate climber behavior, really. For 3 years, I'd watched him operate with the efficiency of a well-oiled manipulation machine. He'd swoop into client meetings at the last minute, present analyses that our team had spent weeks perfecting, then bask in the praise while we sat in the background like glorified assistants. The man had an ego the size of our quarterly budget and twice as inflated. What made it worse was how he treated the junior staff. Marcus had this particularly cruel habit of assigning impossible deadlines, then publicly humiliating people when they inevitably fell short. Just last month, he'd made Jessica from accounting cry during the all-hands meeting because her budget projections were amateurish and frankly embarrassing. The projections that he'd demanded be completed in half the usual time, of course. But I'd learned patience in my 15 years climbing the corporate ladder. I'd started as an intern at Goldman Sachs, worked my way through 3 different companies, and picked up a few connections along the way. My old roommate from business school, Amy Rodriguez, now happened to be the chief financial officer at our parent company, Titan Industries. We still grabbed coffee every few months, though I'd never mentioned the Marcus situation. No need to seem like I couldn't handle my own problems. The first real red flag came on a Tuesday in October. I was working late, finishing up a quarterly analysis that Marcus would undoubtedly present as his own work the next morning, when I noticed his office light was still on. This was unusual because Marcus typically bolted at exactly 5 o'clock, claiming he had important client dinners that everyone knew were just happy hour at the sports bar downtown. Curiosity got the better of me. I wandered past his office, coffee mug in hand, playing the part of someone just stretching their legs. What I saw through his slightly open door made me freeze. Marcus was hunched over his computer, but he wasn't working on spreadsheets or client presentations. His screen displayed what looked like a dating profile, and he was frantically typing messages. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold: the profile photos weren't of Marcus. They were professional headshots of David Kim, our recently departed head of marketing who'd left for a competitor. I stood there for a full 30 seconds, processing what I was seeing. Marcus Wellington, married father of 2, was catfishing people using stolen photos of our former colleague. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive, if it weren't so completely unethical and potentially illegal. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to Marcus's after-hours activities. The pattern became clear pretty quickly. He'd stay late every Tuesday and Thursday, doors locked, blinds drawn, living his elaborate double life online. I managed to catch glimpses of his screen a few more times, and the scope of his deception was staggering. He wasn't just using David's photos on one dating site. Marcus had created entire fake personas across multiple platforms, complete with fabricated job titles, interests, and life stories. He was telling people he was a successful marketing executive who enjoyed rock climbing and fine wine. The real Marcus had never climbed anything more challenging than the stairs to the 2nd floor, and his idea of fine wine came from the grocery store's discount rack. But the really disturbing part was how he was using company resources for his schemes. I noticed charges on the company credit card for premium dating site memberships, fancy restaurant reservations he was making for dates under his fake identity, and even what looked like purchases from high-end clothing websites. Marcus was essentially funding his fantasy life with Meridian's money. The breaking point came in November during our quarterly review cycle. Marcus had been particularly brutal that month, probably because his secret life was stressing him out. He'd fired Tom from IT for a supposed security breach that was actually Marcus's own fault. He'd clicked on a phishing email while browsing his dating profiles on the company network. Then he'd blamed Sarah from HR for failing to properly vet employees when she questioned Tom's termination. But his worst move was targeting my team directly. Marcus called an emergency meeting on a Friday afternoon and announced that our entire department's annual bonuses were being cut by 60% due to underperformance. This was particularly rich considering we'd just closed the most profitable quarter in company history, largely thanks to the client retention strategy I'd developed. You know that moment when someone pushes you just a little too far? When you realize that being diplomatic and professional hasn't gotten you anywhere, and maybe it's time to try a different approach? That's exactly where I found myself. I spent that weekend thinking about Marcus's secret life and how I could use this information responsibly. I wasn't interested in destroying his marriage or personal relationships, that wasn't my business. But his misuse of company resources and the way he was treating employees? That absolutely was my business. Monday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called Amy Rodriguez. Amy, it's Sarah Chen from Meridian. I know this is unusual, but I think we need to talk about some irregularities I've discovered in our departmental spending and management practices. Would you have time for coffee this week? Amy's response was immediate and concerned. As CFO of our parent company, she took financial irregularities very seriously. We met that Wednesday at a quiet cafe downtown, and I laid out everything I'd observed, complete with documentation I'd carefully gathered. The beauty of corporate bureaucracy is that everything leaves a paper trail. I'd spent weeks meticulously documenting Marcus's after-hours activities, his misuse of company resources, and the correlation between his personal stress and his increasingly abusive management style. I presented it all to Amy like the detailed financial analysis it essentially was. Amy's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. When I showed her the company credit card charges for dating site memberships and personal expenses, she actually said a word I won't repeat here. Apparently, this kind of misappropriation was exactly the sort of thing that could trigger a full audit of our entire subsidiary. Sarah, this is serious. We're talking about potential embezzlement charges here. I need to bring this to the board immediately. I suggested a different approach. Rather than going nuclear right away, what if we set up a controlled situation where Marcus would expose himself? Amy was intrigued, especially when I outlined my plan. The next week, Amy announced that Titan Industries would be conducting surprise management reviews across all subsidiaries. Each department head would need to present their quarterly results and justify their expenditures in a live video conference with the entire board of directors. The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday at 4 p.m., right during Marcus's usual client dinner time slot. Marcus immediately went into panic mode. He'd been so busy managing his fake dating profiles that he'd completely neglected to prepare any actual presentations. He spent the entire week frantically trying to pull together materials, which mostly involved stealing work from other departments and claiming credit for initiatives he'd had nothing to do with. Meanwhile, I was quietly preparing my own materials. Amy had given me a special assignment. As the senior analyst, I would be presenting the detailed financial breakdown of our department's expenses. Every charge, every expenditure, every business dinner and professional development cost would be displayed for the entire board to see. Friday arrived with Marcus in full meltdown mode. He'd been staying even later than usual, desperately trying to create presentations that would hide his incompetence and justify his inflated salary. What he didn't realize was that I'd been documenting his every move. At exactly 4 p.m., the video conference began. 12 board members appeared on screen, including Amy, who gave me the slightest nod of acknowledgement. Marcus launched into his presentation, a masterful display of corporate nonsense and stolen credit that would have been impressive if it weren't so pathetic. Then came my turn. I pulled up the financial breakdown Amy had requested, every expense meticulously categorized and cross-referenced. The board members leaned forward as I began highlighting some interesting patterns in our departmental spending. As you can see here, we have several recurring charges to premium lifestyle websites, multiple restaurant reservations that don't correspond to any client meetings in our CRM system, and what appears to be personal clothing purchases charged to the company account. Marcus's face went white as I continued methodically presenting his financial crimes to the entire board. But I wasn't done yet. Additionally, our IT department has flagged some unusual network activity from Mr. Wellington's computer during non-business hours.